TV and Film Awards. But tonight, it's the turn of the gaming industry to be patted on the back for its creative genius. On the shortlist are titles like Call of Duty 2, Modern Warfare, Left 4 Dead 2, Street Fighter 4, and GTA Chinatown Wars. It's an industry worth billions, but recently it's come under fire due to the violent nature of some of its content. So, should our children be exposed to violence, even if it's in the world of fantasy? And are such games corrupting the nation's kids?
I know, hundreds of people whose lives are terrible, and specifically that I know within my area of influence, so surely everybody does, for which those people, gaming is the best thing that they do, the thing that they spend the time the most enjoying in life. And, you know, if you kids who are going through terrible lives at home, abusive parents, they get beaten up at school, staying at home, sitting in your room, just playing video games, like, for you to see that as something bad, it's not bad. You know, jet fighter pilots, they play video games to stay sharp. Surgeons play video games to keep their hands in check. It's not something I think we need to feel that we need to regulate. It's something that isn't bad, and what needs to change is not so much, it's just that perception of it as being a waste of time when it's not, and it is significantly better than a lot of other things that people could be doing.
Films aren't interactive, video games are. Video games are addictive, they promote hatred, racism, sexism, and they reward violence. What kind of a message is that? You know, there's...
The Longest Journey and the sequel Dreamfall, these two beautiful single-player games created by a company called Funcom. They were purely telling you a story, a very linear story that you were experiencing, but you were in control. And I remember there's a particular moment in the sequel, in Dreamfall, a scene in which you play a 19-year-old girl who is having to talk a child who is already technically dead into letting go of life. And I mean, it's such an extraordinary and beautiful moment, and the graphics were wonderful, and the music was great. All these aesthetics were in place, but what it really came down to was just some brilliant writing. And in that moment, I chose what to say, but I was really sitting back and watching this amazing moment that just brought me absolutely to tears.
There's a proven link between behavioural violence and video game violence. In a recent study, listen, hear me out. Sorry. In a recent American study, over 130,000 kids worldwide were monitored, okay? And regardless of age, sex or culture, the kids who had a regular diet of violent video games were found to be more aggressive, they were found to be less caring, they had low self-esteem issues, and they suffered from depression.
Before I bring Kelvin in
later, they can become a path to change for people, especially in an online game when you're part of a community. People who are suffering from depression, who are playing games as a refuge, they can become paths towards action. Games have an enormous therapeutic potential. Virtual worlds have an enormous therapeutic potential.
What about the issue of the level of violence?
I think there's far more blood on the hands of movies, if I'm speaking from the hip. If you look at a certain genre of film that's out there at the minute that they have termed torture porn, you get nothing quite as bad as that in video games.
They're not as addictive as video games.
Do you play...
There is this idea that games are dangerously seductive, whereas I think behind that is the fear that people are simply too weak to handle them, that there's something in us which is just not able to resist these sort of seductions of this other world designed for pleasure.
At the moment, it's not clear to me whether children are being damaged by it, although it must be said that the Baldrick killers, some 15 years ago, one of them, the boy Venables, he was corrupted by it, or he was affected by it, whether he was corrupted by it.
I don't think there's anything dangerous about games. Absolutely at all. They're like any other media. They're like film, TV, anything like that. If you choose, you take from what you want. Now, if I'm not buying the mass murderer comes from playing GTA.
I don't think there's ever been a study that's managed to show a link between game violence and real-world violence. And I think children have consistently been very, very clear about fantasy and reality and being able to discern the difference between the two.